Learn from my mistake. Are you tired of hearing the same old advice when it comes to real estate? Do you want to learn from the biggest and baddest mistakes in the industry? Then welcome to Learn from My Mistake, the podcast that brings you real estate professionals from all over, sharing the biggest blunders and how to avoid them. I'm one of your hosts, Jake Remillard, and I'm joined by my partner, Marie Baginski. We're here to give you the inside scoop on what not to do in the real estate game. From brokers to investors, we've got it all. We're not just here to tell you about our guest failures, though. We're here to help you learn from them so you can make the right moves when it counts. So buckle up and get ready to hear some juicy stories and expert advice you won't find anywhere else. This is Learn from My Mistake. New episodes drop every week. Don't miss out. Learn from my
Episode 12.
Episode 12, and it's obviously not made for kids. I'm just thinking about that as it's, branding, learn from my fuck up.
Actually, explicit box.
Yeah, right.
So I had my 9-year-old doing some video editing for me, though, because he's really good on the computer. And he was like, "Mom, look at what it says." And I'm like, "I know what it says, sweetheart. Just ignore that, please." Anyway, welcome to episode 12. Excited to invite and introduce you guys to our guest today. Although, Bob, you weren't at the last boardroom. Why didn't we see you there?
I was not actually. So we were in between a couple of different masterminds because I really only had the time to give to one, and we chose a different one for right now. So we'll probably be back. We'll probably be back next year sometime. But I made the mistake, and this is actually unrelated to the biggest mistake, but a mistake of at one point being in like 3 or 4 masterminds, and it was great. Like there's a lot of good connections, but you really feel like I can only get so much out of any given one, and so it was like, okay, where is going to be the best fit for what I have time to give right now, and that's where we went.
Gotcha. All right, so that was a not so good of an introduction because I put you on the spot there. But our guest today is Bob McIntosh. Is it 3 Degrees Consulting or 30? Yes. It's just 3, right? Okay. 3 Degrees Consulting, marketing firm, but geared towards real estate investing, real estate investments yourself, correct?
Correct.
So, this podcast is all about, like, Jake was telling you earlier, we want to help people avoid costly mistakes and any kind of mistakes, right? In real estate and in business. So Bob, give your little introduction. Let everyone know kind of who you are, what your history background is, and then we'll start probing you with our questions of what those mistakes were.
And it can be full size too. It doesn't have to be a little introduction.
It could be a full size introduction.
Be careful what you ask for. Right?
You're nice.
You got to understand that. Like, my normal thing, my normal intro is 25 to 30 minutes. Like that, if you want me to do the full thing. So you got to be careful what you say.
Okay, we're done with our live. Great meeting you, Bob.
So been doing real estate for actually, I believe this year is 15 years. So it's been a hot minute.
Yeah.
And started out flipping houses, and now we do mostly long-term rentals. Everything is in the Buffalo, New York market. Say what you will about New York, but the price points and cash flow there is stupid good. So,
Buffalo in particular,
not New York City, not other parts, but in the Buffalo area for sure. But so still do a lot of real estate there. In that journey, I actually moved to Los Angeles when we started. So I was 3,000 miles away from all the real estate we were doing, and was like, well, how do I still provide value to this company from 3,000 miles away? And that's where I got good at digital marketing. At the time, there was no one really doing any digital marketing. In fact, digital marketing was only just kind of, I won't say quite in its infancy, but maybe in its toddler years of going. And so learned to do that. And then from there was actually asked to build out the program that one of the largest real estate education companies in the world uses to teach their students how to do investing, and have since built out pretty much most of the major programs. If you go out there and look, they're all based on the same thing that I was teaching for a long time. And so and then a few years ago decided, hey, you know what? This would be awesome if we just did it for people. Because what I realized is that most investors come to an event, they learn, they go, wow, that sounds awesome. And then they never actually do any of it. They just go, okay, great. And then a million other hats, they have to wear. And this one, internet marketing specifically kind of gets left by the wayside. So now we kind of help folks do that. And I build my real estate portfolio on the side of doing that.
So as far as your real estate portfolio goes, how many doors do you have at this point?
So we're at 32, I believe, and counting.
Families.
It's a mix. I think we've got like 2 single families. The rest are like 2, 3, 4s. I think we've got a 6 unit and an 8 unit. But yeah, I think that the goal is to be over 100 before the end of the year. So got some ground to make up this year, but it's an interesting game for us. I don't know how much you want to go into this, but we have very high LTVs, but very good cash flow. Like our DSCR, if you know what that is usually close on to 2. So it's like, it's this forever conundrum of I can buy properties at cash flow crazy, even paying 12% a year to private lenders. All right. I mean, we prefer not to, of course, but they still cash flow then. But then getting a bank or, even a lending company to refi becomes more challenging.
Yeah. So, at this point, what did you do beforehand? Did you have a typical W-2 job before you got into real estate?
I hacked banks. So I would legally hack banks. And I do want to qualify that.
We got him. Send in the team.
We would test their security, show them how to break, all the holes and where to patch the holes up. So I did that for six years. Made good money, had a lot of fun, but just wasn't my business, wasn't my jam. So eventually left that for this.
Right. Yeah, I would think, what's the struggle do you find right now with getting those refinances if the DSCR is so good?
Because everyone this is where they get you. They say, oh, we do DSCRs, anything above 1.1 or 1.2, right? And then they forget the fine print that says up to an LTV of this, or there's like 13 other criterion that they put in there that most people, if you have a good DSCR, are going to be above. Again, Buffalo's a weird market in that capacity, right? Like it's very inexpensive property. It's fairly cheap rent, not super cheap, but cheapish. But because of that, it just, okay, perfect example, right? We're negotiating right now to buy a 3 unit single. It's a single house, but it's 3 units. The total purchase price and rehab, we're going to be in for like 130. Maybe 135. It's currently today rented for $2,300 a month.
Wow.
Like what? So it's, I mean, like it's things like that. But the property is probably worth 140, 145, maybe 150, right? So you're going to be a very high LTV in that case. But the reality is, even if I pay 12% a year on that at 130, that's $1,300 a month, right? Plus taxes, insurance, everything else.
Right.
Maybe I'm at $2,000, probably not, probably 1,800, and I'm getting 23 today, and it's below market rate. It should be probably closer to 25. So it's like, well, you know what I mean? Like this is the forever. It's one of those. I don't want to stop buying in Buffalo because these numbers are stupid, but I also hate buying more in Buffalo. Like I want to diversify out to other places, but it is what it is.
Yeah. I've never really thought about the LTV being an issue, the loan to value, because for us, in the Fayetteville market where Jake is, at least, DSCR is also very strong, right? We can buy properties 60, 70,000 and rent them out for $1,200 a month. It's good.
All day.
Right? Yeah. So our biggest issue is always there's no lenders that want to lend on under 100,000. It doesn't matter what the loan to value is. They're just like, we don't lend on sub 100K properties. And we're like, wait, what? But the numbers make sense.
That's usually where we package them up. So I'll go buy 10 and then say, here you go.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. We actually had that same conversation with a private money lender yesterday, or not yesterday. What was it, Marie? Like Friday or something. We're in a car with this guy and we're talking about, our market and everything. And he's like, oh yeah, those numbers all sound great. Like I would definitely lend. And Marie was like, cool, like 30 or 40,000. He was like, what? It's not even worth the ink in my pen. Like, let's talk, let's put a couple of them together. So that's definitely the strategy we're going for.
Yeah. He's like, I'll go, because he's like, I can go get a bank loan for 2, 3, 400,000 for 4%, and I'll loan it to you 12% all day long, but I don't want to lend you 30,000. I want to lend you 200,000. So it's kind of funny.
I was say this is where having good credit comes in, right? Just start buying with your credit cards and hang on to them for a year or two, and then rotate it out.
That's true. The 0% interest credit cards, right? All right. So tell us, what do you think so far in your real estate business, or in your, even, owning a marketing company, right? A digital marketing agency? There's a lot to learn to grow and scale that company as well. So what so far do you think have been some of your biggest mistakes?
Oh yeah, there's too many to list. The one that comes to mind though is really our first deal, because literally did everything wrong. This is 2009. Things are going, things are falling apart every day. The house loses value instead of gaining it, which is, hasn't really happened since then. But yeah, no, the thing that I learned in that first deal is, and when I say we did everything wrong, I literally mean we did everything wrong. So first and foremost, I got a 203K loan from Wells Fargo because I saw my job then. So I was bankable in that capacity. Didn't even know hard money existed. Like that was a thing, like, whatever. I had no idea. And I don't know if you've ever done a 203K loan, but it is a nightmare to deal with these banks. Like everything takes longer. I think it took us 7 months to get the mortgage, like, which is crazy.
Wow.
And now granted, that was also during a time when, every day, it's just such a weird time. Like every day there's literally thousands of properties hitting their books just at the local branch. I was just joking with someone else. I was like, do you remember REO tapes? And the guy's like, I don't even know what that is. I was like, literally they would just have like an adding machine tape of addresses, and they say, hey, you got to buy the whole thing. It's 150 properties. It's all or nothing. Like
Wow.
They couldn't get rid of them fast enough. It was that crazy. So just very different times. But so I got this 203K loan, and they did everything wrong. I also trusted them. This is another thing that I've, I'll say the sub lesson is trust but verify. And ironically, that's the entire phrasing, but I did it as hacking. It's like, hey, you can tell me this and I'll trust you, but I'm still going to verify it. I didn't do that in this. So they were like, oh, we have this approved list of contractors that you can choose from. I'm like, well, that's awesome, right? Like if they're already approved by the bank, they must be good.
Yep.
Let me just tell you. So that gets into Tony. And I really hope Tony's watching or listening to this, because Tony, man, what the F. So the first red flag, the first red flag is Tony shows up in a busted old conversion van that's about falling apart. That should have been I'm not saying I need him to roll up in an Escalade, but at least a good solid vehicle that's not going to die on the way to the project, right? There's just things hanging out every window, pipes and PVC, and I'm pretty sure there was like nothing is organized. There's no thought process. It's just throw it in the back of the van and we call it. Like that should have been the first red flag, right? Tony rolls up, finishes 2 cigarettes between the car and the front door. This is in Kearney, New Jersey. It's a row home, so between the car and the door is 20 feet. So yeah, anyways, so Tony did everything you could imagine incorrectly. But my favorite part, and yet I still stuck with him for whatever reason. I have no idea why. I think I was just too afraid to fire him at this point in time.
Right.
So Tony we put new doors in the whole house, and Tony decided that the new fashion, and this is 2009, is brass knobs on the outside of the doors and brushed nickel handles on the inside of the doors. That's the new hot trend.
Okay.
And I kid you not, like I'm looking at this, and this is again red flag number 50 at this point in time. I said, Tony, what is this? Come on, man. He's like, that's how I bought them at Home Depot.
And you're like, no, you didn't.
Yeah.
No,
and I said, so my comment was this. I said, okay, Tony, I said, we're going to go down to this Home Depot that you bought these at, And if this is on the shelf, like this is packaged in, and you can show this to me, I will pay you for the doorknobs that you already bought. I'll also pay you for your hourly rate on the way there and the way back, because man, thank you for being so aware of the latest fashion trends in door handle fixture or door
Hardware.
fixture. Yeah, hardware. I said that I'm impressed with your awareness. I said, however, if we get to this Home Depot and these are nowhere to be found and no one at Home Depot knows what they are, well, guess what? You'll now pay for the door handles out of your own pocket, and you'll pay for my time at $100 an hour. I was like, actually, my time right now and my job was worth about $100. I bill out at $320 an hour, so I'm giving you a discount. And we're going to do that. That was what Tony said after that. Yeah. So, anyways, I knew at that point it was no good. And then the last and final, like, greatest mistake with Tony, and then we'll go on to the rest of the mistakes I made in this process. There is an old row house built in, I think it was 1892, something like that. We're 6 miles outside of Manhattan. Okay, just to give you perspective. Okay, now this is 2009. The final sale price, I think, my purchase price of the house is like 170, right? 6 miles outside of Manhattan, 170. Like, that's mind blowing to think about right now, right? But so there's this old fireplace in the kitchen, like actual fireplace in the middle of the kitchen. And because it's a row house, the fireplace went out through the ceiling of the kitchen. And where the kitchen one was only one story, even though the house was 2 stories, that part was only one. And it went up the side of the row house next to it, and they had sided around the chimney. So I was like, well, we can't have this giant brick fireplace in the middle of the kitchen. That just isn't going to work.
Right. Doesn't work.
And I can't tear the whole thing down, because if we do and there's not this giant gap in their siding, it's going to look terrible. The siding's been there for a few years now. So I was like, that doesn't work. So I told Tony, you're going to tear this thing down. You're going to seal up the inside, and then you're going to reinforce the roof to support all the bricks of the remaining of the fireplace. And you're going to seal the top of the fireplace so that it just becomes this brick thing, whatever. Well, Tony took it down. Tony sealed the top of the fireplace, and he sealed the bottom of the fireplace. But Tony did not reinforce the roof or the bricks of any capacity. So as the weeks go by, I'm watching this chimney start tilting and tilting. No. And tilting, and it got to probably a good 30-degree tilt, and I was like, oh my god. And the direction it's tilting is the lady in the row house next door, same house, right? So her kitchen's in the back in the same place, and I'm just now envisioning, and she's like, I don't know, she was like 95 years old. I'm envisioning bricks flying through the little window, beaming this little old lady in the side of the head, like,
oh no.
Like and I'm like, oh my god. So finally I was like, it's like a Saturday, and I'm like, I have to get this ticket. So I like panic post to Craigslist, any handyman, anyone available, please come help me. Guy comes by, he's like, $2,000, I'll take the whole thing down today. I said, done. Not that I really want to spend $2,000, but I was like, I got to do something, right? So he gets his guys there, and like 3 hours later, they got the whole thing torn down, and he patched the roof up. Okay, we're all great. I've now got it was probably about 12 foot worth of brick in terms of height by standard fireplace sitting in the backyard of a row house. I said, okay, let's start getting these out of here. He's like, oh no, you paid me to take it down, not to haul these out. You're on your own.
Oh no.
I'm like, oh my god,
that's great.
So I had this
he was like, he doesn't want to drop those off, because you got to pay weight when you go drop stuff off at the,
which I didn't know then, right? So now it's in a row house, so there's no way to get to the backyard. You can't you have to carry him through the house to the front, because it's an entire block, like the whole block is houses. The only way into the back is through the houses. There's no other. So I'm like, and he's like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, no way. And I was like, well, how much to take him out? He's like, no. He wouldn't even do it. He just was like, nope. So I'm like, oh my god. So I post to Craigslist again, free bricks, but you have to haul them. Managed to get rid of probably about 2/3 of them. So there's about 1/3 left. And I'm like, okay, well, so I'm like, what am I going to do with these? So I get contractor bags, and I start putting like 10, 15 bricks per bag in, and every trash day I put them in the back of my car, right? I get about 10 bags, put them in, and I drop them off at various locations on trash day up and down the street so that I don't. And
You're
then
just putting them in like city trash receptacles.
Yeah, city trash bags. Yep. Yeah. Like hopefully no one finds
We got him. Send him in.
right. So and then I finally get down to like the last 6 bags, right? And I'm literally at this point leaving. I was living in New York City at this time. I'm leaving New York. I'm literally leaving on the following Monday. This is Sunday or Saturday. I'm like, what the hell am I gonna do with these bags? Like trash day is not till Thursday. So the parking lot I would park my car in Hoboken, New Jersey, where I lived, had 6 trash cans. So one of them got a bag each of bricks. Oh, God. So that was that. Now, the final total F up. And by the way, this is all in one house, all in one house.
Yeah.
The
First
final
one, it's always a doozy.
It's always the first one, right? The final was buyer finally comes through on the house and they put an offer in right where my agent told me I should expect an offer. I'm like, perfect. This is good. We're still going to make 15 grand, maybe 20 grand, somewhere in that range by the time we get close, right? And I'm like, okay, that's, this is good, whatever. Well, FHA buyer, and I didn't know what this meant at the time.
Yeah.
And they do 2 appraisals, 2. And they take the lowest of the 2. Well, the lowest one comes in 15,000 under the asking price or the agreed upon sale price. I'm like, oh my God. And of course they're like, we don't have 15 grand, so we're not going to do that. Like, you got to lower the price. And I was like, this is BS. And so I start looking at the appraisal and I realized that the guy mismeasured the house by 500 square feet. Literally just left off the entire kitchen, which is about 500 square feet, which would have put us right at like within a grand or 2 of the asking price or the sales price, which would have been fine. Right. So I call him. I said, hey, bro, you messed up like this. You did, like, you're missing the entire kitchen. Like, look at your thing. He like goes through and he goes like, yeah, I did. I was like, cool. I need you to call the bank and get it fixed because it's just messing with our sales price.
Yeah.
No, I can't do that. What do you mean you can't do that? Well, look, man, like you see the real estate market now. If I call them and tell them I messed up or an appraisal like this, they'll never hire me again. I won't have any more appraisal work. So I'm not fixing it. Refused to fix it.
Wow.
Refused. And I had no recourse, literally, because I didn't hire him. I didn't pay for him. The bank did. So I told the bank, they said, well, it doesn't matter. Because their bank was, I don't know, Bank of America, one of the big boys. It doesn't matter. The appraisal says this is the price. It doesn't matter what they did in the appraisal. We don't care about what's in the guts. It's the price that they say. And so I was like, all right, screw it. So we just bailed on the contract. I didn't know that FHA appraisals stick with the house for 6 months. So then we had to hold the house for 6 more months for it to fall off. In the meantime, prices had continued to come down. All said and done, we lost like 40 grand on that house. Had I sold it for the price that the bad appraisal had said, I still would have made about 10 grand. Instead, I lost 40 by doing that. So of course I didn't know any better, right?
Wow. Okay. So wait a minute. Let's talk about the FHA loan, right? Or appraisal. Now that sticks with the house, but only for FHA buyers.
Correct.
So if
Only
you
FHA
had a
buyers.
qualified conventional buyer, that wouldn't have mattered, right?
Correct.
But I'm
Correct.
assuming it has more to do with the fact that this is 2009. Yeah. I mean, I bought my first property in 2009 FHA.
Yeah.
So
the low price point of this house, I think our final sale price is like 220,000. So it was FHA buyers, conventional buyers at that point in time who had a 10% plus down payment, because that's really all you needed at that point. Mm-hmm. They weren't buying this house. Like they were buying something a little bit nicer, maybe like another 50,000 higher, and maybe, but yeah, this was first time home buyers scraping together every penny to come to make this happen.
Gotcha. That's crazy. So,
and of course, we left it marketed, like we left it on the market, whatever. But it just, every person was FHA. So we had to change our thing to say no FHA buyers for the first 6 months, because we knew that, hey, if we could, but we got no offers in that time because why? Well, everything's going down and down and down in price.
Right.
People are sketchy. Banks have tightened up lending. Like it was literally the worst time to try to sell a flip.
Yeah. And so I bought my first rental in 2009 FHA. It was a duplex. So I was like, oh, I'll live in one unit. I'll house hack, right? Rent out the other. And it was great.
There's a name for that now. Before it was just get my mortgage covered. Now there's like an actual name called
house hack. The house hack. But it was great because we put, $5,000 down on a $175,000 property in Staten Island, New York. And I still own that property.
The forgotten borough.
The forgotten borough. It's so true. So true. All right. So going back, what would you have done differently?
So going back, first and foremost, would have picked a different contractor. Like that was number one. Oh, I didn't even tell you about. Oh wait, I got to tell this story too.
Okay.
Was Tony the only one that you? Sorry to interrupt. Was he
only
the only
guy?
one?
Yeah, I stuck with him because I didn't know any. I didn't know. I just was like, man, this is just.
Well, and he was already approved on the 203K loan, so now you don't want to.
And if I was someone else, I would go.
Yeah,
it would have been a nightmare. And then, of course, no one wants to pick up half-finished jobs from a contracting standpoint.
Yeah.
So there was a busted pipe in the front because they, whatever reason, in the 1800s, ran piping through the front of the house. So it's on an exterior wall, which is a terrible thing, but it is what it is. Had already busted once. Obviously, told him, hey, fix it. So I'm in the house and I see water spurting out in the same spot. I'm like, so I ripped the drywall off, opened it back up again, and he did fix it, but it refroze because instead of insulating it with proper piping insulation and all that, he insulated it with, and I kid you not, an actual Fun Noodle from Walmart. Like it still had like the pool floaty, like the Fun Noodle sticker was on it. I was like, this is not the same thing as pipe insulation. I know it looks very similar, but it's really not the same thing. It was orange, neon orange.
That was actually, Bob just read an article the other day. That was actually the pipe insulation trend back in 2009.
Yep. It was hot orange. I mean, look, I know I'm orange, and so maybe that's why you picked that one. But I would just prefer actual proper insulation. But yeah, so I would have gone a different contractor, like just even because here's the other thing too, right? Like you have to tell them who your contractor is before, or at least then you had to tell them before you started work, right? Because they had to make sure that they understood the process. You're not going to get your money until after the work's completed by our inspector. Blah 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 blah. Right? So I would have. And the reason I went with this guy, honestly, is because he was the cheapest, which should have also been a red flag. I didn't know. I was like, oh, this guy's the cheapest, right? Like they only gave me X number of dollars. These guys are all above the number that they gave me. So I have to go in, lower. It was a nightmare. And then number two is I would have negotiated harder at the start. And this is what, we're to a certain extent facing here, not the same depth, but, at that point in time, property value was going down in that area, was actively going down. Not, oh, we've slowed down. Like the valuations were in the year that we held the house, it went down. Our ARV went down like 15 grand.
Were you direct to seller or did you buy like from a wholesaler?
We bought it's a foreclosure through, I don't know, PNC Bank or something or whatever. Because everything was foreclosures at that point in time. Like if you're buying a house from a direct to seller, like that was silly. Like why even bother? Because you're probably overpaying. You can get the same house 2 doors down foreclosed on for half the price. But yeah, so I would have negotiated harder because I think what I didn't understand then, and I understand better now and I'm much more aware of, is when you're dealing with foreclosures, even today, even with the market that we find today, and this is the funny part, I knew this because I had worked with a ton of banks, so I understood banks probably, and I still do probably more than I would argue almost most anybody in the real estate space, because unless you've worked at a bank, because banks. Foreclosures are what's called non-performing assets on their books, and they have an incentive to get them off as quickly as possible, because their rating by their regulator is heavily influenced by how many non-performing assets they have. And if their regulator score goes down, their FDIC insurance premium goes up, and they can't cover that. Like they can't charge you more for your loan because their FDIC premium went up, because you just go to another bank that didn't have that. So that's just straight profit loss on their books, right? And so understanding, and this is where just like a little tip, you can go to the FDIC website and see every single bank's balance sheet. What is their non-performing assets, and look at a bank. So if you're negotiating with a bank for a foreclosure, even today, look at their non-performing asset ratio in comparison to all the other banks that are their size or roughly their size, plus or minus 10%. And if they have a high non-performing asset ratio, that gives you more incentive. What I didn't know until later, and I looked at this bank, I probably could have negotiated another 30,000 off that price easily, maybe even more, because that bank's non-performing assets was so high at that point in time that literally they might have even paid me to take the property from them at that point in time, because it actually would have been cheaper for them in the long run versus getting killed in the regulator rating. And so I understand now, like, and as we look right now, and in the current market, there's not a ton of foreclosures like there was then, but there's more than there has been at any point since then. And so understand that non-performing assets to a bank are an opportunity for you to negotiate a better price. And that's how I would have changed. That's definitely what I would have changed for sure. Because if I had negotiated even that 30K, that would have been at least covered some of my loss. If not, maybe even got me to a point where it made sense to sell it.
Yeah, right. You would have sold it to that first buyer.
Exactly.
That's I feel like that's a huge golden nugget, especially right now with the market and the way it is. And depending on your opinion and what you're looking at, the projections for the coming quarters, for anybody that doesn't really understand exactly what Bob was just saying, go back and listen to that again, because even I just quickly did a search on FDIC for exactly that. That's a huge nugget. Thank you.
And by the way, it's totally free. FDIC gives you that information. It's public information because they're, your funds. Well, actually not your funds. I mean, in a way, your funds, but the bank's paying for the FDIC, but it is still a federally regulated company. So how they operate is deemed by the federal government, even though they are not funded by the federal government. And so as part of that, all of the information from every FDIC insured bank in terms of their balance sheet and all of that is all publicly available data.
Yeah. So do they still have like lists of what their bank owned properties, their REOs are for each bank? Is that public?
So it's coming back. It's actually coming back. So a good friend of ours is a very large agent in the Atlanta area. And during that time, she was the go-to REO agent for like 4 of the big banks of Atlanta. Not like your Chase and Wells Fargo and those guys, but the large regional banks. Yeah. And they've already reached back out to her, just so you guys are aware. They've already reached back out to her and said, hey, we're having a lot of foreclosures in the books right now. Will you basically do what you did before and take them over for us? Like, get them sold. So it's coming. Is it going to be lists like it was last time where it's like, hey, I got 150, you take it all or nothing? I don't think we're going to see that level probably ever again, to be honest, but especially with the inventory issues that we face right now. But be aware that, this is happening in these bigger markets that saw a lot of appreciation and now have slowed down a lot. And because of that, right, go out and find who those folks are. Now, you're not going to Google them and find them that way. Why? Because they don't want to be found that way. Like, right. These people do their best to stay incognito, because the amount of work it takes to manage the foreclosure process for REOs for banks is actually a lot of work. And you get a lot of bottom feeders who have no idea what they're doing and don't actually close. So I'm gonna tell you right now, if you want to get to those people, you got to build the relationship and find out who they are. If you dive into enough brokerages and you make friends there, you'll find out who the person is. There's usually anywhere between 1 and 4 per market. Even in major markets like Atlanta, you might only see 4 or 5 max that handle not all of it, but they'll probably handle 75 to 80% of all the foreclosures for the non-big boy banks. Like for any basically large regional down to community, there's usually 4 to 5 that will in a big market. And smaller markets, it might only be 1.
Yeah. I'm assuming in Fayetteville, North Carolina. What's the population in Fayetteville, Jake?
It bounces around a little bit with all the military guys coming in and out, but we're right around 300.
Yeah, so you might even have a person in Charlotte who's the Fayetteville person who handles it, and then they sub it out to a Fayetteville person. That's also very common in smaller markets.
That's interesting. All right, so what else? What is another business mistake? It doesn't necessarily have to be real estate. Give us one more big thing that sticks out. Like, did you ever get into a bad partnership or have some legal issues? What?
Oh, I mean, who hasn't? If you haven't had either one of those things, I feel like, have you even done business really?
Right.
Yeah, no, I mean, bad partnerships for sure. I'm not really going to talk about those because, NDAs being signed and things like that, but there's been some for sure.
Okay.
So the other big mistake actually, and I think this will be the most actionable and valuable, I think, for a lot of the listeners, is not for a long time, especially earlier on, not taking my social media presence as seriously from a business perspective. In fact, I fought because I had my Facebook account since 2004. I was back in the EDU days when you still had to have a .edu address to even get in, right? And I fought because I was like, no, this is for like friends and whatever. This is not for business, not for bit. And I wish now if I had really applied back in like 2010 to using my social media the right way, I think I'd be a lot further along with a lot of different things today than I am currently. But here's the weird thing. We've gone through a cycle. So if you look at the last 3 years, 4 years even, no one cared about social, but for whatever reason, it's back hotter than ever right now, especially with personal brands. I think what's happened is a lot of the BS artists that got a lot of free money during COVID and just tried to make things happen have fallen off because they had no results. They didn't really do anything that was useful. And so they've all disappeared. And so it's left this gap for those who are actually doing, who are actually participating, who are actually legitimate business operators of some capacity to step in and fulfill that hole. And I think there's an entire group of people that are looking for trustworthy folks to do that. And further, people are now, because of COVID, using social as a trust factor verification. So, when I talk to potential business people, hey, go check out my social media. You'll see what I do. Like, look at what's out there. And it immediately, if you're active, gives you more credibility. And, I think had I taken advantage of it back then when it was way easier to do than it is now, I'd have literally hundreds of thousands of more followers, and which would just add to credibility today, which would then, build, more business opportunities in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's funny because, Jake mentioned to you earlier about following us on LinkedIn, but that's somewhere where I've been, purposefully or intentionally trying to network and post more, right, on the business professional side and, finding potential money lenders. So I think, being intentional with like even who your audience is on different social media is something.
Dude, LinkedIn's huge right now. There was a recent I think it was a post from LinkedIn or maybe it was in one of the blogs from like someone at LinkedIn. I forget exactly where I read it, but only 1% of LinkedIn users post more than 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Wow.
The same stat on Facebook is almost 69%. So you're competing against 69% of a platform that has 3x as many users and is posting literally, you're fighting almost over 65% more people. And it's not even that, like the actual numbers are like insane. It's actually like, if you think about it, if it's 3x, really it's 120% or 180% more competition on Facebook than there is on LinkedIn. Essentially nuts.
Wow. All right. Any questions, Jake, or final thoughts before we start wrapping up here?
No, I think, and I feel like I always end this way, but really it was just really cool to kind of get some insights from you. The information that you shared was super actionable. Anybody listening to this definitely should have taken something away from it. I will say, shameless plug real quick, what Marie was just talking about, if you guys have been following us, you have been listening, a big help to us to be able to reach more people and make more of an impact would be just to go ahead and like or subscribe anywhere you're listening. Other than that, Bob, I'll let you kind of give your final, how can people reach you? How can they get a hold of you if they're looking for you? Go ahead and end us with that.
Yeah. So if you want to reach out to me, you can go to go3dc.com. That's GO, the number 3, DC Delta Charlie.com /Bob McIntosh. And that's MC. There's no A in my Macintosh. And you go there, you see all my social handles. You'll see my contact card. You can download, text me, email me, call me, reach out to me however you want. More than happy to help you with your social presence. If you need a website, you need a CRM, you need anything in the digital space, I would pit myself against anyone out there. I probably have more knowledge between real estate investing and digital marketing than anyone out there. So I would love to chat with you if I can help you in any capacity that way, or just connect and say hello. That's cool too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Like Jake said, I think, you gave us a lot of cool golden nuggets, and people will be like, if Tony smokes 2 cigarettes on the way to the front door, maybe I should double, think about this contractor. But
and Tony, if you're watching this, reach out to me. You know how to get a hold of me now. Let's talk.
And hopefully you quit smoking cigarettes by now. But anyway, thank you so much, Bob. It was a pleasure having you on our podcast.
Appreciate being here. And for all of you watching and listening, thank you for your time.
Absolutely.